If you've been watching Canadian real estate headlines lately, you're probably thinking the sky is falling, especially in places like Toronto. But here in Prince Edward Island, the data tells a very different story. I'm Harrison, and I'm a local entrepreneur and realtor here in Prince Edward Island. And today, I'm going to be walking you through 10 years of real home sales data here on the island to show you exactly where we've been and where we're headed as we move into 2026. Before we dive in, it's important you know exactly where these numbers came from. As a realtor, I have access to historical market data for properties that have been listed on the MLS. Now, all of the charts you see today, I made by analyzing the last 10 years of historic data, as well as the 2026 more recent data of residential listings. These charts don't include private sales and don't include sales that were not done through the MLS. Now, what you're looking at here is the average price of homes sold on PEI over the last 10 years. Now, there's a few important things to notice. Even before COVID, which started here in 2020, the market was already on a pretty steady upward trend. From 2020 to 2022, we saw a faster acceleration in that upward growth, and this was because interest rates were low, supply was tight, and a lot of new demand was hitting the market all at once. But what really matters is what happened after that peak. The prices didn't just fall off a cliff, they actually leveled out. And since 2022, prices have been holding pretty steady with a median house price of $375,000 in 2025. So this tells us something super important. PEI didn't experience the same type of overshoot that other markets did, other markets like Toronto. Instead of a boom and bust cycle, we're seeing more of a shift into a bit more of a stable pricing environment. For buyers, that means that prices aren't actually racing away from everyone. And for sellers, it means that the market is holding steady, but pricing correctly matters more now than it did a few years ago. Next, let's look at the number of units sold over the last 10 years. So this chart is based on sales volume, showing you how many units sold year by year. Now, the first thing that probably is going to jump out at you is this huge cliff that we look like we fell off from 2016 through to 2017, where we went from over 1,700 units sold to just over 1,000. Now, there was a few reasons why this might have happened. One, there were tighter lending rules that fell into place in this period. There was a brief pause in population growth all across Canada and here in Prince Edward Island. And also the market, it was just taking a little bit of a breather before going into the next growth cycle. With COVID, we saw a bit of a boom in sales numbers, going from just over 1,100 units to over 1,400 units before dipping down a little bit again. But ever since 2020, we have seen pretty steady growth in terms of the number of units sold on the island, with 2025 ending at around 1,856 units sold. Number of units sold really only tells part of the story. When we look at the total sales volume over the same period, those peaks and valleys aren't quite as steep. You can see that same drop off from 2016 to 2017 is barely a blip now when you look at the total sales volume, selling $315 million from 2016 down to $228 million in 2017. Now, that held pretty steady with a slight increase all the way through to 2020, where we saw the boom from COVID starting to happen, and again leveling out around 2021. Now, since 2023, the market has been on a pretty steady incline when you're looking at that total sales volume. In other words, as the number of homes sold level off, the market itself keeps growing. For sellers, that means that pretty serious money is still moving through the system. For buyers, it means that competition hasn't totally disappeared. It means that competition has just become more selective and a little bit more price sensitive. Now, historically, when homes sell on the island really hasn't changed that much at all. You can see the 10-year averages of home sales by percentage plotted across every month through that 10-year period, with an average line graphed here in the middle. So historically, when homes sell on PEI really hasn't changed that much. When we look at seasonal home sales by percentage, we see a pretty steady pattern over the last 10 years. January and February tend to be the slowest months, with activity picking up through the spring and carrying on into the summer. It's important to note that this chart is based on closing dates, not offer dates. Since most homes close 30 to 60 days after an offer is accepted, November and December are actually the slowest months. After the Christmas break, things start to pick up again. And interestingly, by the time we hit peak summer weather here on PEI, when people are at the beaches and enjoying the season, activity actually starts to slow back down again. So if you're thinking about selling, now is actually the time to start to get things in order so you hit that spring rush and can capitalize on the market. And if you're thinking about buying, you're gonna see the most competition and the most inventory from spring through until fall. So don't be afraid to shop around in the winter for a deal because there's a lot less competition, although less inventory as well. Now, the last interesting general trend I want to get into before getting into more regional data is how homes have been selling over the last 10 years across different price ranges. Now, this chart here shows you homes across a few different price bands, starting with homes under $200,000, homes between $200,000 to $400,000, homes between 4 to 6, and then 600 to 800 plus. Before 2017, the majority of homes sold on the island were under $400,000, with a huge amount of that inventory being under $200,000. Now, as the market has grown, that has changed pretty dramatically. Today, when we look at last year's data, we're seeing more and more homes sell for above that 400,000 mark than ever before, and far fewer homes going for under $200,000 than we've historically seen. What I did find especially interesting is the growth in the $200,000 to $400,000 range. In that range, the middle segment has actually expanded quite a bit. Now, for local buyers, this might not be the best news, and this is what a lot of people have been complaining about, that under $200,000 market has dried up, and that back in the day was most of the homes being sold just 10 years ago. For new buyers moving to Prince Edward Island or comparing PEI to other markets, this is still relatively positive news. Assuming you put 5% down, your household income would need to be around $75,000 per year to be able to afford a house around that $300,000 mark at today's interest rates. And a big bonus is that here in Prince Edward Island, we actually have a program that will help first-time home buyers with their down payment through a repayable loan to the government for homes under $350,000. So it means there's a lot of options available in that sweet spot for the middle market. Now, this is probably a good time to talk about where you can actually buy a house for under $350,000 on PEI. That brings us to our next chart. This chart shows the median house price per region across the island. The island is broken up into 7 main regions. We can go a lot more granular than this. When we look at average sales price by region, a clear split starts to show up. Not unexpectedly, markets like Stratford, Cornwall, and Charlottetown are at the higher end of that price range compared to the rest of the island, with Charlottetown having a median house price of $407,000 in 2025. Now, in places like Summerside and Eastern PEI, average prices are closer to $350,000, which lines up more closely with that growing middle segment we just talked about. And then you have Western PEI, which is a bit of an outlier, but remains the most affordable region on PEI, with average house prices closer to $260,000 in 2025. What this chart also helps show is direction. Which markets are still getting more expensive, like the North and South Shore? Which markets are starting to level out, like Summerside and even Charlottetown? And what markets are actually starting to get more affordable, like Stratford or Western PEI? All great insight if you're a buyer looking to get into the market. This gives you a bit of a regional sense of what you might expect when it comes to house prices. Now, if you're planning to sell, understanding how long your house could sit on the market, depending on how you're priced and what region your home is sitting in, is a super important thing to know so that you manage your expectations going into selling your home. And that's exactly what this next chart shows. This chart shows, on average, how many days on the market by the region and by the price band did a home sit from 2022 through to 2025. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of factors that go into how long it will take your house to sell, but this gives a really solid high-level view of what to expect. Across the island, homes under $450,000 tend to sell the fastest, usually anywhere from 30 to 60 days, depending on where you are. As prices move higher, especially above that $650,000 range, things start to slow down drastically, and location really starts to matter here. For example, in Western PEI, a home priced at over $650,000 can sit on the market for up to 4 months or more. That same price point in Charlottetown could sell in half that time. Now, across PEI as a whole, the average time on market in 2025 was 62 days. 62 days is a healthy, balanced pace. It's not rushed, but it's also not showing the market is stagnant. All of this historical data gives you a really, really good snapshot of where we have been over the last 10 years. But what's important is to use this data to compare it to data that's currently coming in for January and February, and using it to help predict what we might be expecting to see here in 2026. When we look at January and February, over the last 10 years compared to 2026 January and February, we're off to an okay start. We are down slightly from last year in terms of the total number of homes sold with January close dates, but we are still ahead of many previous years. When we factor in conditional sales expected to close in February, things are starting to look a little bit slower, and that tells us that there was a lot less buyer activity in December and early January than there was in previous years, which is a bit unusual in more balanced markets. Now, in terms of January sales volume based on dollars, we see a bit of a similar story. In January of last year, there was about $45 million of sales volume. Now in this year, we're seeing about $31 million. Now this is very similar to what we would have seen in 2024. Now it's still early, but based on the data, I predict that 2026 is going to be a very similar year in terms of the real estate market to 2024. That likely means the median house price is going to hold steady around the $350,000 mark island-wide. We'll probably see somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 homes sold across the island over the year. And in my best estimate, we'll probably see a sales volume around $700 to $800 million by the time we get to the end of the year. To sum this all up, if you're a buyer looking to buy, well, the market is definitely trending a little bit more in your favor. You have time. Don't be afraid to negotiate, especially if you're putting an offer in on a house that have been sitting on the market for a while. If you're thinking about selling, you need to go in with very clear expectation. Pricing your home from the start correctly will have a big impact on how long it sits on the market and how quickly your home sells. And while the market is a little bit more balanced than it was a few years ago, overall, PEI is on a much better trajectory than the rest of Canada when it comes to real estate. So you don't need to rush, and you may not want to. If you want to explore these charts in more detail, visit PEI.Realestate/stats to check out the platform we're building to help people find the perfect home. There, you can interact with the charts from this video and stay up to date with future videos we post. Finally, if there's a question you want answered or a topic you want to see me cover, make sure to leave it in a comment below, and I'll be sure to address it in the next video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.